Josh, thank you so much for joining me again today. We are going to dive into AI tips in financial services. So, we often hear things like AI is really big to take on. Do we have to go all in? Let's dive into some of those thought processes that people have and really talk about some of the tips that you've found in working with customers along their AI journeys. So, first and foremost, doesn't need to be all or nothing.
It does not need to be all or nothing. I think that what we're seeing is a ramp up, and this really started in the last year where many people had already been using AI firm wide at scale with tools that they had. At the same time, the push that we hear from everyone in the ecosystem, from NVIDIA in the latest GTC conference, is that enterprise AI is really taking off, where people will run their own GPUs. They may run them on in their own data centers or in public cloud. But this really comes down to, as you mature your AI usage, the control that you have and the diversity that you're going to see is really increasing in size. But you can start small, and you should start small and grow organically to minimize the risk.
All right, down to the next one. I had a long debate with somebody about this the other day. Is it true that AI is only as good as the data it's trained on? And how can that be protected?
I'd say that I think machine learning, it was very much about how much data that you gave it. But with all the changes that we're seeing, the ability to generate synthetic data, even from Red Hat's own InstructLab and RHEL AI, you only need a smaller set of examples. So to some degree, AI enabling that in your firm is much more like giving a new training a new employee and giving them the handbook that says, here are the rules of our organization. Here's the domain knowledge that you need to understand. And very likely, you already have these in your firm. And for sure, you want to continue to feed it latest information and continue to evolve your models. But I would say that it's certainly we need to demystify or debunk that you actually need all of the data of your firm. Generative models are able to take a small amount of information and turn it into a wealth of conversation and interaction.
Great. ROI. It is a favorite topic everywhere we go. What kind of return on investment? And one of the things that we often hear is people just look at the dollars, right? That is one component. There's also employee satisfaction, which means lower or higher retention, lower attrition. What factors do you see, and what should people really be considering as they evaluate the potential ROI on this kind of an investment?
I think you need to look at it from the top down or the CFO's perspective, that you're not comparing the cost of an individual model or the infrastructure or a GPU. You have to look at it from the total impact to your organization, the net new business value that you're creating, the efficiency you're driving, as you said, the employee retention, which really comes down to empowering them to be better at their job with more efficiency. I would say that there's lots of ways that AI is interpreted as replacing people, but I see it as we want to replace toil of people so that we can all communicate with each other so much better and faster with the right contexts. And AI is a key enabler of that, especially when you're thinking about chatbots. But even the way that people interact with systems, you don't have to look at pages worth or a day's worth of logs to identify something. You can send AI after that and identify exactly what happens, root cause, in a much more efficient way.
You just touched on people interacting and how they communicate. We know collaboration is going to be critical for successful AI implementations. Tell me a little bit more about what folks can do and what that looks like.
I think to some degree, because I said the toil is being removed, or the really hard work of aligning 20 people to gather and understand information. I think many more people need to become basically philosophers. You need to really think from the company's perspective and your end customer's perspective on how should we be seeing a given situation. And without a concrete situation, we want to say that The rules that you define and how concisely that you can really crystallize, that's the prompts you're going to give to your model, or even the knowledge you're going to give to it, so that it can be trained to repeatedly do something at a much faster scale and pace than an individual or a group of people could do.
An old saying that I don't know if it's just an American saying or if it translates globally. I hope it translates, but it's don't reinvent the wheel. What can folks do? What has already been done? What learnings can they take away so they don't have to reinvent the wheel?
Yeah, I think, generative AI especially seems so nascent and new, and we see all the possibilities of, robots, walking around us and helping us out. That can be like, wow, we need to get under, all this under control. But to a large degree, especially financial firms have already been implementing the controls and the infrastructure that they've needed to do generative AI for many years. So one example is, how do you make sure that a model isn't hallucinating and creating the wrong result? It's the same thing of making sure that someone in a call center doesn't answer something incorrectly, or someone approves a transaction that actually should be approved. Generally, this is called something maker checker controls in a financial firm, or a champion challenger. In an AI, it's really critic models in your models. So you want to make sure that you're putting controls in place to make sure that you're having that quality control in nature. So that's just one example where all the knowledge and maturity that you have in your firm over the last set of decades, bring those lessons learned forward in this generative AI space, and you're going to really accelerate your move towards having an ROI with generative intelligence.
Well, thank you for all of these tips. We have run out of time, but so much more to cover. So join us for the other AI and financial services series that we've got going on, or sessions, I should say. Josh, thank you again for joining me, and I look forward to having you on the next one.